We can use the amount of earned schedule as a metric. It helps us to assess and communicate schedule performance on our projects. This video describes how to do so. To illustrate, I'll use an example. We need data from earned value management. We need the planned value, and we need the earned value. We also need the project timeline. We can get that from the baseline schedule. To help organize the data, we'll use a table. The table has 12 columns and 4 rows. We'll only use 10 of the columns for the example. Each column in the table is for a period. Periods can be months, weeks, or even days. We'll label the first row as period. And we'll just use numbers to enumerate the periods. 1, 2, 3, and so on, up to 10. On the second row, we'll put in the planned value. Let's say that there are $10 of value planned for each month. So the cumulative value will be 10, 20, 30, and so on up to 100 in period 10. In the third row, we'll put in the earned value. It generally doesn't occur at a steady rate, so we'll put in, say, 5 for the first period, and then 23, 33, 40, 45, and 54. We'll stop at period 6 so that we can see what the burndown chart tells us in the middle of a project. Now it's time for earned schedule. See the introductory video for details on how to calculate it. For the example, it's easy to determine. The example is set up so that all we need to do is move the decimal point one place to the left on each one of the earned values. So that gives us 0.5, 2.3, 3.3, 4.0, 4.5, and 5.4. There's the data, but it needs to be in a better form for us to assess and communicate schedule performance. For that, we'll adapt a technique from the Agile framework, the burndown chart. Burndowns use a simple XY grid. Given a starting amount, they show what remains to be done. And if we connect these points, what we have is a straight line that runs from that starting amount at the beginning of the project all the way down to 0 at the end of the project. In Agile, the amounts are for story points, backlog items, or hours. For us, the amounts are units of time. Let's label the axes. The vertical axis, the x-axis, is periods to be done. The horizontal axis, the y-axis, is periods elapsed. Next, we'll set the scales. We're going to divide the vertical axis into periods. That starts at the top at 10, 9, 8, and so on down to 1. The maximum number of periods to be done doesn't change over time. It's set by the planned duration in the project baseline. Now we'll divide the horizontal axis. It's going to get divided into periods. We'll use the same numbers as on the table, but we'll mark each period from 1, 2, 3, and so on up to 10. Unlike the periods to be done, the periods elapsed can change over time. They're based on the project schedule, and if, for example, the schedule is late, that number of periods increases. Let's put in the planned burndown. 1 period is planned to be burned for each elapsed period. So we go over 1 and down 1, over 2, down 2, and so on down to the final period, period 10, at which there are no more periods remaining to be done. And when we connect the dots, we have a nice straight line from the starting period down to 0 in period 10. It's time to lay in the earned schedule. To do so, we have to do a quick calculation. We want the time remaining at the end of each period, given the schedule that's been earned. So we'll subtract the earned schedule at the end of each period from the maximum number of planned periods. In the first period, that's 10 minus 0.5 to give us a burn down of 9.5. In the second period, that's 10 minus 2.3 for a burn down of 7.7. And from there, it's 6.7, 6.0, 5.5, and 4.6. We'll plot these points on the chart, but rather than doing them all at once, let's see what the graph tells us as we go along. Let's plot the first point. That's 9.5. That's about here. And if we connect up the line to that, that looks like about this. What does that tell us? It's easy to understand. The earned schedule line is above the planned burn line, so the project is earning less time than planned. It's behind schedule, in other words. The project is off to a slow start, but it's still early. Let's see what happens next. So we plot 7.7. 7.7 is about here, and 6.7 is about here. And again, connecting the dots. Let's see what that gives us. First point onto the second point. What does that tell us? The earned schedule line is below the planned line, so we're earning more time than planned. In short, the project is ahead of schedule. Maybe everything's going to turn out to be okay. Let's see what the next period tells us. That's 6, and that's right here. And again, connecting the dots. What we have is an intersection of the earned schedule burn down and the plan burn down. When we have an intersection, that means the project is exactly on schedule. That rarely happens in real life at the end of a period, but it is possible. Continuing on, the next point is 5.5, so that's 5.5, which is about here. And 4.6, that's a little bit higher, about there. And again, connecting the points with a line, that takes us there, and that takes us there. What does that tell us? Once again, the earned schedule line is above the plan line, so we're behind. What's more concerned here is that there's a gap, and the gap is opening up. That means there's a problem with schedule performance. It's getting worse. That does not bode well for the future, and that's really a call to action. To sum up the earned schedule burn down, it gives a picture that tells the story. It's an accurate impression of schedule performance that suggests future consequences. The burn down is easy to understand, and for communication it is, as the old adage goes, worth 1,000 words.